It's been a while since we worked on Leave It, so first I'll review how to get the dog started with it, and then I'll talk about extensions and how to take this technique further. So to start out, you have treats in both hands. I'm going to consider one of these hands the reward hand, and the other one is my poison hand, meaning that I don't ever give the dog the treats out of this hand. Now, if I'm running out of treats and I want to put my hands behind my back to swap some treats over to my reward hand, that's fine, but I am not directly giving my dog treats from my poison hand, because this is the handful of treats that I'm going to ask the dog to ignore. And so I don't want my dog to ever think when I say leave it, you ignore it for a second, but then you get the treat a moment later, because if it were a pill or something that the dog shouldn't eat, like a grape, we want leave it to mean ignore that thing entirely. You're not going to get it at all. So I'm going to use my right hand as the leave it hand and my left hand as my reward hand. So I'm going to turn my dog around so that you can see him more easily. So I'm going to show him my hand that I've got food. Yes. When he disengages from my hand, so when he stops poking at it and he moves away, I say yes, and then I reward him. I just dropped a kibble. So he's not pushing at it, but he's keeping his nose close to my hand, yes. And I want him to disengage with it. So now what I can do is I can show him this hand and I'll say, leave it. Yes. It might take a couple repetitions, especially if you have a young puppy where they're really persistent and they want to keep nudging at your hand. But when you get a moment of them pulling their face away from the treats, then you want to say yes, reward them with your other hand. So now I'm going to go to an open palm. I'm going to show him the treats. If he goes for them, I'm going to snap my hand closed. I'm going to give the cue before I show him the food. Leave it. Yes, and we've worked on this a lot, so he knows this game. He knows what's happening. Leave it. Yes. And what I like is that I said leave it, and my dog's eyes flicked up to my face, so he's paying attention to me instead of my handful of treats. Okay. Good boy. So I'm going to show him the handful of treats again. Leave it. Yes. When my dog disengages from my hand or when he looks up at me, I'm going to say yes, and then I reward him with my treat hand. When my dog is doing well with that, I can put the treats on the floor, keeping my hand covering them. And again, I'm going to say leave it when I put my hand down. Leave it. Yes. If your dog is pawing at your hand on the floor or being really obnoxious and it hurts, you can also put your foot over it. You can do this standing as well, so you can have your foot blocking the treats. So I've got my treats on the floor. I can go to a spider hand. So I've got kind of a cage going on with my hand like this, or I can just totally uncover my hand, uncover the treats rather. Leave it. Yes. So when I say leave it, I want my dog to look away from those treats and look at me instead. Leave it. Yes. So that's with stationary things. And then what we want to do is progress to moving objects. And again, we're going to stick with the treats for now, but if the dog is doing really well, you can do a toy and practice with a toy. Leave it on the ground, and you go through the same thing. Leave the toy flat on the ground, uncover it. If the dog dives for the food, you cover it back up with your hand or cover it with your foot so that they don't get to it. And then when you're going to go to treat drops, what are you doing? When you're going to go to treat drops, you want to start with just a little movement at a time. So you're not throwing something across the room. I'm not dropping something super special. I'm just dropping the kibble that we've been working with. It's not like I'm dropping a piece of, hot dog on the floor or something. So I'm going to show my dog that I've got the food. I'm going to drop it just a couple inches off the ground, and I'm going to say the word first. Leave it. Yes, good boy. Pick it back up. I can go a little higher because he was successful. Leave it. Yes. Leave it. Yes. So you increase the height that the food is dropped from. And after you increase the height, so you want to work on one thing at a time. So increase the height that the food is dropped from. And then you can also work on when you are saying the cue, leave it. Because right now, I'm saying it before the food gets dropped, but that's not what happens in real life. In real life, you drop the object and then you have to say leave it. So you want to change your timing as you go so that initially the first one is leave it, food drop, yes. And then I want to time it to I drop the food and I say leave it at the same time. Leave it, yes. And then eventually I would drop the food and say leave it very shortly after dropping it. Leave it, yes. But I want to increase one thing at a time, so I'm not going to increase the amount of movement of the object I'm asking my dog to leave alone and change the timing of when I say leave it. I won't do those at the same time. I will work them one at a time, and then once the dog is successful, then I can start increasing the other factor. You can also work on this in a more natural setting, so sitting on a chair and just, oops, I dropped something off my lap, because dogs figure out these games really, really quickly, where they figure out that you are training them right now. And so if I want to mimic more of a real life scenario, I can sit, oops, I dropped something, leave it. Yes, good boy. You can have it. And so he is getting so good with the leave it that now that I'm offering him food from a flat hand, he's not taking it because we had worked on leave it with a flat hand. The other important thing to remember about leave it is that leave it is a command and it has to be reinforced every time the dog listens to it. So if I say leave it and my dog listens, I want to throw him a party, whether I have treats on me or not. So my dog specifically likes to chase my cat, and so when I say leave it and he ignores my cat, I make a very big deal about it. Otherwise, if I say leave it, but then nothing happens one way or the other, he's going to stop listening to that command because it doesn't result in anything that means something to him. So when you practice leave it, the things to remember are you only say it once, so you're not saying leave it 5 times. You say leave it once. If you need to reset, start over, try again. I want the dog to look away from the object and look at me, because leave it means don't look at that, look at me instead. Anytime I use leave it and my dog is successful with it, I want to throw him a party, because I need to reinforce that in order for the behavior to continue. And if you're working with treats in your hand, make sure that you have your reward hand and your poison hand or your non-reward hand. Dog is never going to get the treats that I'm asking him to leave alone. I'm only going to reward him with my other hand.